What's going on, everybody? We're here today at the Sooke Potholes Park. We're going to have an awesome afternoon exploring the Riverside Trail. I'll show you a few great spots to come swimming in the summer. One epic waterfall. There was a resort abandoned here in the 80s. We'll go and check that out. And a pipeline runs through the park. Pretty sure it's abandoned though. Don't come and protest. Potholes are geologic formations in the river, which were formed by the melting of glaciers, millennia ago. The water rushed its way down the river, found little areas where there might have been a harder rock amongst some softer rock, and that hard rock got loosened up by the ever-flowing water, and eventually started moving and slowly carved out big, beautiful swimming pools, or maybe little small potholes on the side of the river. But I'm going to show you one that's probably the most impressive pothole that you'll see along the Sooke River here, and you can swim in it. I know I told you could swim in that little pothole over there, but what I didn't tell you is how hard it is to get to it. You got to get to the other side of the river, which might look easy. It's not that far away, but you got to cross and amble yourself all along the rocks over there, and then get down to that little swimming hole, and then jump in. And then, once you're in the hole, it's not that easy to get back out. So think about that before you jump in. But I do it at least once a summer on a nice day where the river level's gotten down pretty low at the end of the summer. So it's way, way safe than those days. But yeah, scrambling out is a little bit stressful. So if you're afraid of heights, I wouldn't do it. This summer you can just walk through this little crevasse here. It's only about chest height. Well, it looks like they put in a bridge this year, so it's going to be way easier to get across to the little swimming hole, if you trust the bridge. Some pretty solid architecture. This pile of debris that I'm kind of sitting and hanging out beside, you can see some little stuff over there, you can see some bigger stuff kind of over towards the end of the rocks there. That was all tossed up by the river. Just a couple years ago we had an intense flooding event that washed out a lot of properties along the river, and brought the water to just some epic unseen heights. And for perspective, this is where we're standing right now. So everything down there would have been underwater. We would have been probably knee deep in water up here. This entire swath of the river just completely flooded out. So we're a little less than a kilometer from the parking lot that we started walking at, and we come to this little fork in the trail here. We take a left. Beautiful spot to go swimming. Let's check it out. Alright, another fork in the trail here. This one's important to mention because if you carry on to the left here, the trail does start to get a little bit more technical. We've just been walking on some pretty cushy crushed gravel for the last little bit since the parking lot. And if that's your jam, well, you can just kind of continue on up the hill here and you'll meet the Galloping Goose Trail just up on the other side of the road. Or you can just follow the rustic Riverside Trail over this way. Alright, and not too far from that last fork on the trail we were talking at is this little zone through here. A little bit of a canyon. You can jump in from the left side or the right side in a few places where it's super deep, definitely safe, and you can swim like it's an infinity pool. Like I said, if you don't want to continue along that Riverside Trail and maybe you're just going to head on back to the parking lot from here, you'd walk up the hill behind me, cross this little service road, and head to the Galloping Goose Trail. Alright, now we're on to the Galloping Goose Trail. It's a really, really long trail, so don't think you're going to do the whole thing in a day unless you got a bike. The Galloping Goose Trail is about 50 or 55 kilometers long. It goes all the way from downtown Victoria to well, the boundary of the Sooke watershed behind me. The watershed is our local Canadian term for the protected area where our drinking water lives. And it's very well protected, and we have really delicious drinking water as a result. But yeah, Galloping Goose Trail, which we're walking on right now, is pretty well crushed gravel all the way, maybe about 15 or so kilometers outside of Victoria. It turns to paved, so if you like your rollerblades, or you're pushing a stroller, or you just prefer riding on pavement, well, then you can join the trail at the areas around Victoria. And in a few areas along the trail side, you can actually find old remnants of the railway. These are all some squared timbers that the train would have ran on at some point. So yeah, when they were ripping up the tracks, they would have recovered all of the metal. But yeah, the wood they basically just tossed to the side. This is one of the old telegraph wire posts. Might be tough to make out, but you can see the telegraph wire kind of running up to that tree there, and then the bark kind of rows all around it, and then the two telegraph wires continue on down through the forest a little ways. They break off somewhere over there. Yeah, we've got the old post just hanging there, all covered in moss, and you can kind of see the T top on there right at the top of it. About 100 years ago, that was the only means of communication between, one end of the line and the other end of the line. And now we got supercomputers in our pocket. So behind me is what was to be the site of the Deer Trail Lodge, built back in the 80s. Never got finished though. The company that was holding the purse strings apparently went a little broke during the financial collapse in the 80s, and local contractors stopped getting paid for their work as construction workers, so they stopped showing up for work, and it just never really got picked up again. Left to rot out here in the park until it's just gone to what it is now. You can see where the road splits there. That was built by the resort. This was basically going to be like the turnaround check-in area if you drove up to the resort. Park in front there where all those trees are now, and check on into the resort. All that's left is behind this chain link fence. The bank is actually eroding towards the edge there, so that's why they've got it very well fenced off, and I would highly advise that you don't go inside. A lot of just exposed rebar and crumbling stonework. So had it been completed, that's kind of an artist rendering of what the place would have looked like. And right up along it here said they were hoping to have 250 hotel rooms with conference facilities for 450 people. Really would have changed the whole look and feel and enjoyment of this area. If it wasn't for nature overtaking the space, you could really see it becoming a resort one day, but no sir, it is a park, and it is a park forever now. And just had a conversation with a couple of people there, telling them what happened and why it's not a resort and whatever, and yeah, well, they said they're happier. They're having a nice afternoon here in a peaceful park, enjoying the sounds of rushing water, and instead of trying to jockey for position for the best view against the other 400 and something people that are staying up here. If this place was a resort, I don't know what my childhood would have been like. The same goes for a lot of people here in Sooke. Yeah, we all grew up here on this river. The fact that it's not a resort, that's something I'd never change. Some of the trails within the park were actually built by the people who were building the Deer Trail Lodge, in anticipation of all of the tourists who would want to stay here. As the view at the bottom is just spectacular. Just up there on the cliffside, you can see all the graffiti tagging the edges there. That were some of the viewpoints that they were building. for the Deer Trail Lodge. And if you can see that one little sketchy stone staircase comes on down to a little half circle viewing platform just below it, yeah, there's a huge like school bus sized chunk of rock fell out of that a couple of years ago. So it's reasons like that that they've got it gated off. You can go in if you want. I've gone in, but yeah, just know that the edges are super sketchy. Stay away from them. Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna become a fish. Well, we got to make sure we give a nod to the sponsors. Big shout out to the Natural Connection for helping us explore the Sooke Potholes Park today. If you're looking for somebody to help you get a fun and exciting, adventurous, unique tour of the Sooke area, check out the Natural Connection. They've got a guide who's lived here in Sooke for about 30 years. Guy knows everything that you would want to know about the Sooke area: plants, berries, where to go for a good beer afterwards. He's super friendly. He's pretty good looking. Oh yeah, it's me. Yeah, it's my side business. A little busier in the spring and the summer, but I am available all year round if you want to get out into adventure here in the Sooke area, or if you're just looking for some advice, feel free just to shoot me a message. Knowledge is always free. The Sooke Potholes area is also a great place to start a bigger adventure out into the park here. It's a relatively short hike to Peden Lake. You can see the distances over on this side here. So it takes you about 3 kilometers to get to Peden Lake, which remember is 6 kilometers to get back. But you can go much further. You can go all the way out to Empress Mountain, Crabapple Lake. This even loops all the way around, comes down to the Harborview Road area, if you're familiar with that. But this would be like a 2-day hike, not a short thing. Even to get yourself from here all the way up to Empress Mountain, that's a full day thing. Like I'm talking leaving, early morning and not getting back until late afternoon. And also there is no cell phone signal, none. As soon as you get into the Sooke Potholes Park here, you might have like 1 or 2 bars, depending on who your carrier is. But out in here, absolutely no cell phone signal, except maybe on top of Empress Mountain. You got a pretty good visibility area up there, so you probably can catch some cell phone signals. But yeah, for the bulk of this trail, you're down in valleys and stuff. So yeah, no cell phone signal, which means no communication if you get lost or need assistance. 20 minutes up the trail here, we're going to get to Maryvine Falls, which is absolutely beautiful. You've got to find time to get yourself up to Maryvine Falls if you're going to come to the Sooke Potholes. It's definitely off the beaten path. The trail is a little more challenging than the rest of the park because we're technically getting into the C2C regional park, but it's worth the hike. And even in flip-flops, you can make it. You're just going to have to walk really slow. But yeah, it's definitely worth it to check out. Here on our way up to Maryvine Falls, hard to see from the trail, but there's a few cedar trees in here which have been stripped. And don't be worried or sad for the trees. They will survive. Plenty of their siblings, parents have survived this sort of treatment in the past. First Nations along the coast of BC have been practicing bark stripping for over 1,000 years or more, probably more. And the tree survives because they don't do the whole tree. As long as you do a small part, or I believe less than 180 degrees, the tree will survive because the tree actually passes nutrients kind of through the area between the hardwood and the bark. So if you were to damage, way more of the tree, it would be hard for the tree to pass nutrients up and down through its trunk. So the same way, you and I might die if a certain portion of our body was burned, the same way for the trees. They can't handle that much damage to their skin. There's a few more over there, a little small one there, and it's likely to Sooke here in Sooke, still practicing their craftsmanship of bark weaving, which is an excellent use of cedar bark. Like in my opinion, woven cedar bark fabric was one of humanity's first smart fabrics. Because imagine this, you've got a hat made out of woven cedar. Somebody worked real hard on it, it's a beauty hat. In the wet season, that cedar is going to absorb a little bit of ambient humidity, and it's going to grow a little bit. So the weaves are going to be tighter. There are tiny holes in between the weaves of the cedar bark. And they could waterproof it a little bit more by just diluting some bark with some hot water and rubbing that along the hat or the jacket, almost like an all-natural Gore-Tex treatment. But then flash forward to a hot, dry day in the summer, you're wearing that same cedar hat. And the cedar weave's drying out, which means they're shrinking a little bit, which means the holes in that weave are getting a little bit wider, which means you now have a breathable hat in the summer that keeps the sun off your head, and a waterproof hat in the winter that keeps your head dry. Brilliant. Alright, took a bit of a climb to get here. I'm kind of sweaty, I don't know if you can notice, but we've arrived at the Vancouver Island Hyperloop. See that thing behind me there? When it's completed, you will be able to travel from Victoria to Tofino in approximately 45 minutes. They're going to put you in a little cylinder and they're going to put you in the tube in Victoria and they just send you on out to Tofino. Awesome. Get a second tube for your surfboard. Don't put it in the same tube as you because it's just going to hit you in the face the whole way up and down. So you're going to have to pay double if you want to take your own surfboard. But Hyperloop travel is coming to Vancouver Island in, I don't know, 2075. I'm shitting you. This is the water pipeline. This was a gravity-fed aqueduct, essentially, that ran drinking water from Sooke Lake Reservoir to the city of Victoria. They started construction on this thing in the early 1900s and ran for a little while. I can't remember exactly how long, but we've got things running a little more sophisticated nowadays than just pipes running through the forest. This thing's still here though. You can walk along it. It weaves its way still from the Sooke Lake Reservoir to a Humpback Road Reservoir. If you want to check that out on a map, or maybe I'll cut to a map. Yeah, you can walk parts of it. Some parts aren't really as, I don't know, structurally sound to walk on. There's a few areas where there was a bridge and now the bridge is gone. We're going to come up to a bridge here that is actually still standing somehow over 100 years, and it's just been unkept in the forest. There's a cement pipe running over top of it. The bridge is built out of wood. It's over top of a pretty rushing river, and yeah, somehow it still remains standing. Walking on the pipeline, actually pretty easy. You can tell that a lot of people do it. Moss is all worn out on the top. It's kind of sketchy because it does, you know, it's curved, so you really got to kind of walk like, you know, heel to toe, like you're walking on a little balance beam or something. But after a few strides, you kind of get used to it. Don't take your foot off the pipe though, because yeah, you're pretty easy to slide off, and you wouldn't want to slide off in a spot like this, because here we are on the bridge. So this is the same water that flows on all the way down to Maryvine Falls. This would be Maryvine Creek, and the bridge over top still holding this thing up after over 100 years. We've got some cement pilings on either side, and the water's kind of running underneath it and finding little ways to run around the pilings. So I'd say it's gonna collapse at some point. Nothing stands the test of time against Mother Nature forever. But yeah, it's still going. And once we get away from the sound of the rushing water, it's a very quiet, peaceful walking experience because you're not really breaking any sticks. You're not making any noise as you move through the forest and just becomes a really quiet, peaceful, meditative walk. Until you run into a bear who's walking the opposite way on the pipeline, then things get awkward, but outside of that, pretty nice. You continue on past the pipeline if you'd like. The trail goes up to Peden Lake, which is a pretty great option for just a nice day hike. You can get up there in just about an hour and a half, and then about an hour to get back down because it's more downhill coming back to the Potholes Park. It's a huge park area up there, the Sooke Potholes Wilderness Preserve. Check out the map online, plenty of places to explore. Not all the trails are that well signed, so you can get lost if you don't know where you're going. So make sure you know where you're going and somebody else knows where you're going. So as you're hiking along the trail here to go and see the beautiful Maryvine Falls, you may be asking yourself, who was Maryvine? Why have I not heard of this woman up until now? And how important was she that she got a waterfall named after her? Well, Maryvine and her partner Edward were one of the earliest settlers in the Mechosen area, which is about 15 or 20 minutes from Sooke, depending on how fast you drive. They started a small farm, small, I think it was about a 600 and something parcel acre that they got to settle out in Mechosen. They established a massive apple orchard. Some of those trees are actually still there, still bearing fruit, at what is now Glen Rosa Farm. And I believe Glen Rosa was the name that they gave the property as well. Just a bit of a throw to their Scottish heritage. I believe Glen Rosa is another beautiful area in Scotland. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scottish friends. So yeah, the Vines started themselves a nice farm with some sheep, with some apples, and Edward was a chartographer or a map maker for I guess for the Hudson's Bay Company, I would assume. And yeah, he charted the areas in the Sooke Hills amongst other areas, and decided to give the creek his wife's name. Nice thing to do. I'm not sure if he dropped her moniker on any other little points of interest around Vancouver Island, but yeah, here in Sooke we've got Maryvine Creek and Maryvine Falls. Interesting though that Mr. Vine would see fit to name this after his wife, because according to a book that I read while I was working at the Glen Rosa Farm restaurant, Mrs. Vine and Mr. Vine had a bit of a tumultuous relationship. She had a fierce temper, but was also very well respected in the community because she was a midwife, brought in a lot of the babies into the world, who, whether they were settler babies or babies from the First Nations. She helped both sides of the coin there. But yeah, she had a bit of a fierce temper and was not to be crossed, to the point that one day Mr. Vine was coming home late from, I don't know, work, tending sheep, whatever people did back then. Didn't even have the courtesy to send her a text message to say he was going to be late. She had been working on dinner all day long and making some delicious like bread pudding or oat pudding or something just really hot and sticky. And apparently he was sitting on the porch huffing and puffing in the hot summer sun, and she came out and dumped that hot pot all over his unsuspecting head. And yeah, as you might suspect, he got quite burnt. But according to the book, she was a very doting housewife and helped him heal as he laid in bed for a few weeks recovering from his burns. So I'm not sure if that was before or after he named the creek after her, but yeah, bit of a colorful story from the settler lifestyle. I suppose it's a pretty stressful existence. I'm sure Mrs. Vine had her reasons for dumping that hot pot all over her husband's head, but yeah. Just interesting things that you learn when you grow up in a place here. Yeah, Glen Rosa Farm, my wife and I worked there. It was a restaurant, and yeah, when times were kind of slow at the restaurant, yeah, we would read some local books about history so that we could tell those kind of colorful stories to other restaurant patrons that would come. Oh man, well, that was great. And I've been coming up here since I was a kid, and I just never get tired of just wandering around the Sooke Potholes and checking it all out. You know, it's something about the energy of the river, maybe. Just got that constant hum of rushing water pretty much everywhere in the park. You can hear it this time of year anyway. And this time of year, it's nice and peaceful. You know, I saw maybe like 6 people while I was up here. 2 of them I knew from Sooke because I'm a local. But yeah, if you come up here in the summer, word to the wise, it is a zoo. They're charging for parking, but the parking lot's still full. People will just like park wherever they feel they can fit in, but you're gonna get a ticket and you might even get your car towed, so it's definitely not worth it. You'll want to carpool with some friends. You know, you could ride your bike. Like I said, the Galloping Goose Trail is running right beside us here, so ride your bike. You don't have to ride your bike all the way from Victoria. There's a few spots where the Galloping Goose Trail crosses main roads. It's got parking lots, so yeah, you can strap your bikes to the back of your vehicle, park somewhere close to the Galloping Goose, ride yourself into the park. And the great thing about that is when you've got a bike here in the Sooke Potholes Park, you can use that Galloping Goose Trail to get further into the park, get further away from all the crowds, find yourself a nice quiet stretch of river, because that's the thing, there's not just like 2 or 3 little spots to swim here. You know, there's a few main spots that are right close to the parking areas, and those are going to be packed. But yeah, all you got to do is maybe walk 5 minutes further, 10 minutes further, or just 30 seconds further. You go around a little bend in the river and it's just yours. There's a little quiet little spot. It's only big enough for 2 people or 4 people, and it's yours. So yeah, get up here early, find a beautiful spot, or if you're going to show up late, maybe ride your bike in. If you want to come in by car on a nice day in the summer, and say you want to get here like before 10 a.m. I mean, even on hot days, it's been crazier than that. I remember last year during the heat wave, my wife and I came up here probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, because we live relatively close by, and yeah, the parking lot was already like half full. All the locals in Sooke just doing the same thing, because it's hot. Summers are getting a lot hotter here, and this is one of the best places to come for a swim on southern Vancouver Island. And I hope you can get on out here, enjoy the Sooke Potholes yourself one day. Beautiful place to swim in the summer, or just come for a nice relaxing hike in the winter. We'll see you next time on Traveling Looney Adventures.